So, welcome to LiberalViewer First Wednesday Live. This is my monthly Q&A show. It's been weekly up until this week, and this is the week I'm going to start doing it as a monthly Q&A show, the first Wednesday of every month. Thanks for joining me. Sorry I'm a little bit late here. These summer months, my schedule is a little bit hectic. Don't have the, as a stay-at-home dad, I don't have the regular school hours, and I work around some other stuff. My daughter's been taking classes at Sacramento State University, even though she's just in middle school, and those only are a couple hours a day, so that doesn't give me a lot of time to work and try to fit all this stuff in. Next few weeks, though, I may be having some more time. Some longer summer camp hours for my daughter, so hopefully I'll be able to put in some more YouTube time. Anyway, I do have a couple questions that people asked me after I posted the show here. I see I have some people showing up also. Any questions you want to ask about the topics in the news, or about YouTube, or media, politics, whatever? I'm going to try to do about a half-hour show if I get enough questions to do that. Like I said, I do have a couple questions that people asked me down here in the comment section before I started the show, so I'm going to start with those. I got to add them into the software here. I hope you all can see and hear me, by the way. Let's see, date modified. Oh, there was like a two-part question here that I got. You can see from Tall Skinny Geek asked, LV, what do you think of the military's actions in Egypt? Should we, U.S., be in favor of the change, or is it too early to know what's happening? And then there's a second question about the Evo Morales plane incident, which I will get to if I don't forget when I start talking about Egypt. So that's talking about breaking news. That's like the big exciting breaking news today is it looks like President Morsi, the Islamic Brotherhood president of Egypt, who was elected democratically, has been deposed by the military. I don't know. I mean, I haven't checked the news in like the last half hour or so, so I may have missed something, but because it is definitely a breaking story. As to what we in the U.S. should think about that, well, I mean, first I'd say that it shows, I guess since I have the channel LiberalViewer, I have to say it all comes down to the importance of the word liberal. And the reason for that is because there is a difference between a democracy and a liberal democracy. And a democracy just means a government that the most people voted for. But a liberal democracy is a democracy that not only most people voted for, but also respects the rights of the minorities and the people who are against the government that most people voted for. That's respects civil liberties. And that's where President Morsi in Egypt had some problems. I've done some reading. I kind of keep up with some things in the Middle East. My wife's family, a lot of them are emigrated from Egypt back in the late 50s, early 60s. So we have some family interest in the region. And it seems to me that the military is... the United States has a lot of influence with the military in Egypt, and that's kind of a result of U.S. foreign policy triumph back in the 70s, with both starting with Nixon. There was this whole thing where Sadat expelled the Soviet advisors, although that's kind of a controversial historical fact as to whether the Soviet advisors were actually expelled and whether it was because of they wouldn't give Egypt offensive weaponry for the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And anyway, but how important that was to in Egypt, whether it really was a schism in the Soviet-Egyptian relationship in the 70s, Kissinger and Nixon were really trying to create that schism and really wanted to break apart Egypt and the Soviet Union, and it was actually Carter that was able to do that. I think more with because of the Camp David Accords. Egypt became more of an ally of the United States than of the Soviet Union in the in the 70s and late 70s and certainly into the 80s. And so the U.S. built up this relationship with the Egyptian military, and I think that is why the situation in Egypt has been more stable than, say, the situation in Syria, which remained a Soviet client and is still like a big Russian ally, and that's why the U.S. doesn't have the same influence in Syria that it has in Egypt, and especially with the military. So, I think that the U.S. should be glad that the military is providing some stability so that Egypt isn't more like Syria, is what I would think. But I also have some problems with, deposing a democratically elected leader. The thing is, from what I've been reading about Morsi, is that he didn't really have, he had a core support among the Muslim Brotherhood. Did I call it the Islamic Brotherhood before? Sorry about that. But he did have core support from the Muslim Brotherhood, and then he got a lot of votes from people who liked him or voted for him in spite of his connection with the Muslim Brotherhood, who expected him to sort of reach out to the center and be more of a coalition builder. But after he was elected, he played much more to the agenda of the Muslim Brotherhood, and he suspended a lot of civil liberties. They were prosecuting comedians for insulting the president. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. So it's hard to say how to weigh those two things, that there's a coup against a democratically elected leader, but it's also a democratically elected leader who was not a liberal Democrat and who obviously had lost the support of, it looks like most Egyptians, or, to the extent what you see on the Egyptian street represents what happened, or the majority opinion of Egyptians. So I guess that is sort of my long-winded historical perspective on what's going on in Egypt and what's going to, and I think the part about it's too early to tell, and because I'm going to go back and see, it is kind of too early to tell, and like I said, I maybe things have changed since I checked the news half an hour ago, so I don't want to be too glib and too simplistic about what's happening there, because I wouldn't pretend to tell you exactly what's going to happen next, because I don't know. But I think that if they spend the next year restarting the constitutional process and come out better, and some people say, that what I hear a lot from people on Fox News, and that's what I preface it by saying is from people on Fox News, is that the Muslim Brotherhood took over in Egypt because, and I heard someone actually say this today, because they were the only political party that they were afraid to suppress in Egypt before Mubarak was overthrown. And I know that's not true, because the Muslim Brotherhood was totally suppressed by Mubarak and by Sadat. Sadat was assassinated, and anyway, but I'm getting even more long-winded on my answer here. But my point being that I don't really know what's going to happen next, and but it's a complicated situation, and I wouldn't say it's an overthrow of a democracy completely, or that it's a triumph of the people either. It's because of the military takeover. But I also want to get to the second question here. What do you think of the Evo Morales plane incident? And for those who don't know, Evo Morales, who it has to do with the whole Edward Snowden thing, and Evo Morales is the president of Bolivia, and he was leaving Russia, and there was some talk of him having Edward Snowden on his plane, and his plane was like several European countries. I think it was. I'm checking here. I think it was France and another country like wouldn't let his plane go by until they stopped. It was diverted to Vienna. That's what it was. Amid suspicions, he was carrying surveillance whistleblower Edward Snowden, but of course he wasn't there, and I mean it is kind of unprecedented. And the other thing I would say is when President Barack Obama came out a few days ago and said that he wasn't going to scramble jets for a 29-year-old hacker. I think what I think this incident means is that's something of a cover story, perhaps, that they are really interested in getting Edward Snowden. And I mean, it makes me think almost of I wonder if some of the tools they use to get Osama bin Laden might be being put to use to at least find, not necessarily eliminate, but find Edward Snowden. And so yeah, that's what I think about that. I had one other question that somebody asked me in the comment section before I started the show here I wanted to get to, and then I'm going to take some live questions. How many people do we have here? Let me see, we're getting about 30 people about signing up. What do I got here? Do I have any new comments coming up here? But anyway, while I'm waiting for that to come, yeah, almost 30 people watching, so let me take this one other question, and then any of you who are in the discussion section who want to ask me anything. The other question I had came from John Kleen, and he asked me, what do you think of the Supreme Court's ruling in the Salinas versus Texas case? Do you think it will destroy Americans' Fifth Amendment rights? And I actually have talked about this case. Excuse me, I'm going to take a quick sip of water. In a previous LiberalViewer Wednesday, someone asked me about the Salinas versus Texas case. Basically, it was someone who voluntarily came in for questioning in a shooting case. Was it a murder? I can't remember. I haven't read it since the last time. But he voluntarily came in and answered a bunch of questions about the case. And then at the end, they asked him, so are these shotgun shells that we found at the scene going to match up to your shotgun? And at that point, he just didn't say anything. And the police wanted to use the fact that he didn't say anything in answer to that question against him. They never read him his Miranda rights, but for those who don't know, you always have the right to remain silent and the right to an attorney, and the right to consult an attorney before questioning, and all those things. You always have those whether the police tell you about it or not, but they don't have to tell you about it unless they are questioning you while you're in custody, and then they want to use your answers against you in court in the prosecution's case in chief. That's when Miranda applies already. And that's important because, the question I got asked here had asked, will this destroy Americans' Fifth Amendment rights? Well, the Supreme Court has been narrowing Fifth Amendment rights for a long time. Oh, but anyway, the question in Salinas versus Texas was, could the prosecution use the fact that the guy just said nothing after he was asked about the shotgun shells matching up his shotgun? Could they use the fact that he said nothing as evidence for the jury to hear in his prosecution? Because normally if the police ask you a question and you invoke your Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate yourself, the jury doesn't get to hear about your invoking your Fifth Amendment rights. Of course, this guy came into the police department voluntarily, so Miranda didn't apply. They didn't have to tell him about his Fifth Amendment rights. And what the court decided in Salinas versus Texas is that the prosecution could use his lack of answer in the case as evidence for the jury to consider in the prosecution. And it was kind of a split decision. There were a couple justices who thought that because he didn't specifically answer the question by saying, I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, then his silence could be used as a sign of guilt because he never invoked his Fifth Amendment rights. And then there were a couple. Then there were a few more. Or then there were a couple justices. I think it was three justices at that first position. Then there were a couple justices, probably Scalia and Thomas, who said, "Well, even if he had said I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, then it didn't matter because he wasn't under custodial interrogation. They could have used it against him anyway." So, and then there were like the four justices in the minority who said the fact that he didn't say anything shouldn't be used against him because that is using your silence to incriminate you, and that's a violation of the Fifth Amendment. But there were only four justices for that position, and so that's the way it got answered. And I think the problem is that we have five conservative justices on the Supreme Court, sometimes more than five when it comes to criminal justice issues. Even Sotomayor sometimes can be more to the right when it comes to some criminal justice issues. And I think that that's been a trend since the 80s, since the end of there's the whole Warren era, and I don't know, Earl Warren and Warren Burger, and then we went into the Rehnquist court, and back since the 80s it's been narrowing Fifth Amendment rights. All the criminal justice rights have been narrowed, and hopefully I think possibly if we get like a President Hillary Clinton after President Barack Obama, that's the one good thing. I said Sotomayor can be a little weak on criminal justice issues, so it may not be complete, but I think that we may, if we get one more Democratic president elected after Obama, there may be kind of a shift back to the left a little bit, or at least to more expansive criminal justice rights. That would be nice. But that's just the way things happen in a criminal justice system where the Supreme Court can. There's a pendulum, I guess. I don't know. I can only hope there's a pendulum that's going to swing back one of these days. That's my most optimistic answer to the question there about do you think it will destroy Americans' Fifth Amendment rights? Well, I think it's part of a long series of Supreme Court decisions that have narrowed our Fourth Amendment rights, our Fifth Amendment rights, our Sixth Amendment rights, our Eighth Amendment rights. There are a couple things that expanded Eighth Amendment right where you can't like put the mentally ill or juveniles to death anymore. With juveniles, did that one? I think that one got to. I know the mentally ill. I have to go back and check on the juveniles. But anyway, I want to check here real quick. I've been going about 20 minutes on those for a few questions that I got asked beforehand. I see I've got about over 30 viewers now. So let me check real quick and see if I can find myself. Wait, what's going on with my view all where's my view all comments thing? Oh, there it is. Oh, I see I do have a bunch of comments here. Let's see. Sword Thane asks, what's your opinion of North Carolina putting in anti-abortion stuff in anti-Sharia law bill? Irony overload. Well, this is a story I hadn't heard about, but that does sound pretty ironic that anti-abortion and anti-Sharia in the same bill. I guess that's North Carolina. But BM Peeps asked, what do you think of the coup in Egypt, which is something I already talked about pretty extensively. Then exploratory research asks, is Israel right or wrong? And I think that is too bipolar a choice for me to answer. I think that, I mentioned in a previous Liberal Viewer Wednesday that I'd spent some time in the Middle East studying the Palestinian question and Israeli nationalism versus democratic values. And I think that Israel definitely has a right to exist. I believe in like the two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think that the actions of the Israeli government in terms of keeping the Palestinians as a subject people for a long period of time has only hurt both peoples and is, it's a stain. But I think that there's also a lot of Palestinian responsibility for the situation. So I can't really say right or wrong. I could talk about specific incidences, and as I said, I have been to the area a few times, and I've studied it in an academic way as well. And I've also met several Israelis and several Palestinians over the years who I've gotten to know somewhat. So I think it's just a very complicated issue that can't be answered and right or wrong. William Tobin said, "Who is your ideal candidate for the presidential race in 2016? Well, I don't think there is an ideal candidate. It's been a while since I really, before Barack Obama, I never really endorsed a candidate or supported a candidate in the primary who then became the candidate and won. I actually thought Barack Obama was the best candidate. I donated some money to him the month that he announced, which was February of 2007. And I never really thought he was, a left-wing liberal. I thought, I was somewhat disappointed by some of the ways he moved to the center before he became president. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit in my upcoming produced edited video about whether we should impeach Obama for NSA spying. I think most of my disappointment with Obama came between February 2007 and November 2008, when he moved to the center and supported the FISA Amendments Act and amnesty for the corporations that engaged in the warrantless wiretapping, and he has disappointed me somewhat since then. But I always thought that he was a pragmatic centrist politician. I just thought that he was the best chance for the Democrats or for the people a little more to the left to win in 2008, and I thought he was a lot better choice than McCain and a lot better choice than Romney. As for who it's going to be in 2016, I don't really have much of a clue, to be honest. It looks like it's going to be Hillary Clinton, but I wouldn't mind seeing. I saw Howard Dean was talking about running, and I wasn't a big supporter of Howard Dean back when he ran for president. What was that, 2004? And the left wasn't a big supporter of Barack Obama in 2008. I actually remember it was John Edwards was the big candidate of the left, of the liberals, and Kucinich, of course, but Edwards is the more viable left-wing candidate. And, I don't know. I wonder if there's any chance that Al Gore might get back into it. That might be interesting, because I think he would be a different kind of candidate at this point than he started off as like a DLC conservative Democrat back in, what was it, the 88 campaign. Would go way, way back. And I don't know if he's too old now, but of course I think it's possible Hillary Clinton will run and just clear the field, or have one opponent who's not that strong, and I think that's the most likely thing that's going to happen in 2016. And my ideal candidate's certainly not going to be in the Republican field, so I guess that's the answer to that question. Let me see. Benta has asked me about cops shooting a dog in California, which I can't answer because I don't know anything about the case. Tilde said, wasn't he trying to change the Constitution and didn't he refuse to have parliamentary elections? Well, there were a lot of anti-democratic things that Morsi was doing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was democratically elected, but he... Oh no, I didn't mention Marco Rubio when I took my drink of water. Okay, my mouth's getting a little dry here. Here's my Marco Rubio. And I noticed I'm going to record this and use this in future shows that Stephen Colbert did this great animation for taking the Marco Rubio. So it's going to be it's going to be a thing. I know Marco Rubio, speaking of 2016 candidates, I think Marco Rubio is going to be a Republican candidate, and we're not going to hear the end of the water there. So let me see. Do I have a couple more questions here? Oh, Tilde also asks, do you have to speak magic legalese to take advantage of a right not to incriminate yourself? And well, that's the thing about these Supreme Court decisions. There was one thing I forgot to mention in that discussion. It reminds me there was a case back like 10 years or so ago about whether if you run away from the cops, if that, cops aren't allowed to stop and talk to you unless they have at least a reasonable suspicion based on articulable facts that criminal activity is afoot, which means they have to like point to something that they can put in words that makes them suspicious. And it's not a very high standard, but they have to have something. And so then the question came to the Supreme Court, well, does the fact that you're running away from the cops, does that give them the suspicion that they need in order to talk to you if they didn't have suspicion otherwise? And the answer turned out to be yes. So that means, and if you actually just stand there when the cops walk up, that's kind of like a waiver. You're like voluntarily talking to them. So you can't run away and you can't just stand there. So basically you have to slowly walk away from the cops. That's your only option if you don't want to waive your constitutional rights. And so that's kind of the way that the Supreme Court is like narrowing the constitutional rights without totally getting rid of them. So so I think what Tilde was saying there about you have to speak magic legalese to take advantage of a right not to incriminate yourself. Well, yeah, kind of. It's kind of like you can't just stand there and you can't run away. You have to slowly walk away from the police if you don't want to create the reasonable suspicion that gives them the right to talk to you anyway. So let me see. Do I have any more good questions here that people? I'm starting to run out of this. Oh wait. Ken Fraser asks, what do you think about Supreme Court justices having a limit on their term, if you combine the two questions there? And also a question about the Zimmerman case. I guess I could talk about those real quick before I end the last episode of Liberal Viewer Wednesday, or the first episode of Liberal Viewer First Wednesday Live, depending on your point of view. So I actually like the fact that Supreme Court justices have life tenure. I'm not one of those. I mean, the only other way to do it would be a limited term, but I would hate to see elected judges there. Even though, I mean, as political as the Supreme Court is now, if they were elected or if they were in some way had to be reaffirmed, I think it would be even worse. So I like the life tenure. I mean, if they were going to make it like a 20-year term or something, I suppose that might give more turnover. But it just it gives more power to the judiciary, and although I don't like the way things have been going with the 5-justice conservative majority that has basically been there for about the last 25 years. I did like a lot of the cases that the more liberal court and the way that this is like the 50-year anniversary just passed of the Gideon versus Wainwright decision that created the public defender position. And I recommend for anyone who has HBO, they watch Gideon's Army, which is a documentary about public defenders. I was a public defender for about 5 years, and a public defender is someone who represents people accused of crimes who can't afford a lawyer. You have a Sixth Amendment right to an attorney, and it was only 50 years ago that the Supreme Court decided that that right means that you have the right to that attorney for free in criminal cases appointed by the state, and of course that's really important. And while I'm not so happy with the current conservative majority, I have some optimism that someday there will be a more liberal Supreme Court, and I want them insulated from any kind of political pressure, so I like the life tenure of Supreme Court justices. On the Zimmerman case, I'm starting to really worry that there's going to be an acquittal in that case, or I haven't watched everything, but I seem to have seen a lot of the prosecution's work, and the only other, I think it might be one of the lesser included offenses. If it's not going to be an acquittal, I think there's like a manslaughter charge instead of the second degree murder. I have to look at the charging information on that, but the prosecution case isn't looking good. In a previous live event, I talked about how a third of the jury were people the prosecution actually knocked off and got put back on a Batson challenge, or a JEB versus Alabama challenge, where the defense said, we think you knocked these women off because they were women, and you have to give us a gender-neutral reason why you knocked them off the jury. And the prosecution couldn't come up with a gender-neutral reason, and so the judge put him back on the jury. And it's only a 6-person jury, so that's like a bad relationship. And then, there was the one defense attorney that started with that knock-knock joke that I think was not a good strategy either, but then the other defense attorney, Mark O'Mara, is doing a good job. And just the way the facts are coming out, there's a lot of people saw it a lot of different ways, but if there's one way that creates reasonable doubt, that is, what is supposed to be leading to an acquittal. And if you have a decent defense team and you have the resources to make that case to a jury, which George Zimmerman definitely does, that looks to me like an acquittal or one of the lesser included. I haven't seen the whole case, and I haven't seen everything that's happened so far, but as much as I emotionally dislike what happened to Trayvon Martin, as a experienced criminal defense attorney, that is my opinion of what's going on in the George Zimmerman case so far, unfortunately. So I guess I'm over 30 minutes here. But I see I'm getting more and more viewers. I do definitely need to take a little Marco Rubio here again real quick. So, it's July 3rd here in the United States. I now have a bunch of viewers who come from outside the United States. I even have a bunch of viewers in Great Britain. So I hate to rub in the fact that tomorrow is the 4th of July and that it's the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence of the United States from England, or was it Great Britain back then? I don't think it was Great Britain back then, but I actually have kind of a tradition that on the 4th of July, I always like to read the Declaration of Independence, and I don't know how often that you all do that, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. I happen to have this Declaration of Independence and Constitution of the United States here, and as I pointed out the other day on LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup, this is from the Cato Institute, so it is not one of them liberal constitutions. This is a libertarian conservative constitution and Declaration of Independence. And I actually thought the text of the Declaration of Independence was especially appropriate given what's going on in Egypt today. If I'm not going to go into like all the bad things that King George III did, but some of the stuff here at the beginning Let me see. I've got the Declaration of Independence. I got some text here for you to look at. This is on July 4th, 1776. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the form to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security, such as has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. And then it goes into what King George III did, and I actually think it's a great idea to read that on the 4th of July, every 4th of July, but I think that's kind of what's going on in Egypt right now, although the military puts in a whole different aspect to it, but yes, and I agree with 2-Bit Viewer there. The founder stole that from John Locke. Yes, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is John Locke's Life, Liberty, and Property. And I'm actually a big fan of John Locke's natural rights, and I definitely believe in not everything John Locke believed in, but I do think it is why I believe so strongly in the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights is because basically the people who wrote it were believers in John Locke's natural right theories, and that every human being should be treated with respect and dignity and had the natural right to be treated that way. And that's where, the rights of due process, and if you look at the Fifth Amendment, we were just talking about Fifth Amendment rights. The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. That comes right from what I was just reading in the Declaration of Independence, and however much the Supreme Court narrows them, they're still there, and they're still there for a future Supreme Court to really protect robustly. So that's my optimistic thought for the 4th of July, for this big day for this new revolution in Egypt, which is sort of a combination of a democratic revolution and a military coup. That's kind of weird, but thank you all for joining me, and I'll still be doing my LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. This show, LiberalViewer First Wednesday Live, will air again at the first Wednesday in August. I may do some live events sort of randomly if there are new breaking news or some reason I want to do them. And of course, I believe sometime tomorrow I should have my latest edited produced video up, which is titled Impeach Obama for NSA Spying ? And which is a critique of the Amazing Atheist video, Impeach Obama, and some other people who have, I think, overreacted or over-focused on President Obama's responsibility for the NSA spying, which is really more of a three-branch of government responsibility. And so look forward to that. That should be up in the next 24 to 36 hours, I believe. And So I appreciate the growing number of you who've joined me during this, and for those who've watched it as a recorded show, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good rest of your week, and thanks for joining me for my broadcast on the internet.